All right, Shabbos, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Share to thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of for the year of Tafshin Pehei 5785, our annual TALMUD Torah sponsors. The Tilson Mishpacha as a zechus for besuros, tovos for all of Am Yisroel. TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan. Stephen Teri Czinn in honor of their granddaughter Devorah Eliana Czinn, and creation of the Yahrzeit of Dr. Zinn's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim, Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, in the zechus of refuah sheleima for Rabin's cousin serving in the IDF, Benyamin Chaim Pesach, Ben Musha Chana, and creation of the Yahrzeit of Rabin's mother, Pesa Mira Bas Chaim, Dr. Moshe, and Ellen Gavant, in memory of Dr. Gavant's parents, Yakov Meir ben Moshe Leib and Shena Bas Abba, and Dr. Behzad and Yemina Soufer, in the merit of a refuah sheleima for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya, and Gabi and Shena Cohen, in the zechus of refuah sheleima for Yocheved Rivka Bas Chaya. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, all of the neshamos Lavan Aliyah, the families in Nechama, all those who need a refuah, should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Baruch Hashem, bring home our hostages, b'shalom and b'karav, and allow our holy soldiers to be successful. B'chol ma'asei yidehem. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. A really great daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Kuf Nun Vav 156, and we are picking up inEz Hashem on Kuf Nun Hey Amud Beis. I believe we left off with. Right, we just finished off the story of. All right, so Amar of Yeshua. So we are up to, which is 2, 4, 6 lines up from the bottom. So I'll say, so remember again, the start of this sugya really was on Kuf Nun Hey with Aleph, where the Gemara discussed the following idea: at what age is a katan able to go ahead and sell off estate property? Now, one of the interesting things that we've established is, on one hand, a katan does have the ability to sell property, right? We saw this because, again, a katan has the ability to sell taltalin in order to ensure that he does not go ahead and suffer from poverty. So he's allowed to sell taltalin. When it comes to estate property, we're a little bit more concerned. Number one, because it's real estate, we're concerned that he doesn't have the necessary business acumen. And number two, because it's family property, we're concerned that perhaps he doesn't really know what it is that he's doing. And therefore, again, he may come to go ahead and make erroneous deals. So we had a machlokas, from what age can he sell property? So Rava said in the name of Rav Nachman, from 18 years old. Rav Huna Bar Chinina said in the name of Rav Nachman, 20 years old. It's a fundamental machlokas. Okay, so says the Gemara. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna B'reit Rav Yoshua, Ula Eidos Edusa Eidos. However, it's important to understand that this need to be 18 or 20. This is dafka din in selling real property. But halacha l'maisa, in terms of eidos, just giving testimony, so a boy above the age of 13 years old and a girl above the age of 12 years old are permitted to go ahead and give eidos. Right? That's the halacha. Eidos. If you look at the Rashbam says over here, well, it's about 6-7 lines up in the Rashbam. Amar Rabbi Funa udla eidos meyed. Afapi shamana bepachos michaf shnei yodea betiv masa umaton. So masa umaton eno mocha b'nichse aviv. So you know we just said before that below the age of 18 or 20, a child is not versed in business matters, and therefore Allah Almighty can sell off estate property. Aval le'edus ne'eman hu lahaid mashera'a v'shama miben yud gimel ve'elach shevi shtei saros hol ve'eno shota. But again, halacha l'maisa, in terms of edus, giving testimony from the time that he's 13 years old and on, he is permitted to give testimony. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Amar Zutra lo Amar El Metaltalin. So Zutra said, by the way, this is only to give edus on metaltalin. Aval mekarkoi lo, but ultimately to go ahead and give edus on karka, he's not believed. He's not believed. Apparently, he's not believed until the ages of 18 or 20. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? So I don't understand. Why is it that this kid is allowed to give eidos on metaltalin but not on karka? So my shna metaltalin, this zine. So I guess what you would say is like this. That since halacha l'maisa, the kid is believed to go ahead and sell metaltalin. Therefore, he's believed to give eidos on metaltalin. Is that what it is that you're saying? And since he's not believed to sell karka, at least the state karka, so too he's not believed to give eidos on karka. The Gemara says, okay, Elami'ata, here's the issue with that. Elami'ata, how this now? What about the following? Hapu'utos mekchan mekach, o memkaran memkar. Yet also we learned that by children, now we saw this in yesterday's daf, that by children who exhibit proper das and understanding, their sale is a proper sale and their purchase is a proper purchase. So you see that children can, in other words, children who demonstrate the mental acuity to be able to engage in such a transaction, the transaction is valid. To which the Gemara says, no, b'metaltalin. Okay, that's the metaltalin. Hachanami de'edusan eidos. So to over here again, their eidos will be eidos. So I'll say, so interestingly enough, salach al-maisa, that's the idea. Amarle, it's different. Hasam ba'ina ba'amdu shnei anashim v'leka. See, I will say, so again, what the Gemara is going to say is like this. If you're going to tell me that the ability to accept testimony is fundamentally tethered to their ability to transact business in that area. So, for example, you wanted to say that a boy over the age of 13 years old should be able to give eidos dafka metaltalin, but not karka. Because when it comes to karka, real estate, we really don't want kids transacting in real estate until they reach the age of 18 or 20. Well, if that's the case, children, even below 12 and 13, are permitted to go ahead and sell metaltalin. Right? We saw this before. Then this is a takana that Chazal made so that children who need to support themselves will have the ability and the means to do so. So if that's the case, then you should say even children below the age of 13 should be kasher le'edos, should be able to give testimony in the case of metaltalin. To which the Gemara says, no, that's a different situation. It's very different. By eidos, so by eidos, the phrase is va'amdu shnei ha'anashim. Literally, again, the two men will get up and give eidos. So I'll say, what do you see from here? That by eidos you need anashim. You need adults. You need adult men. So it's different. So therefore, again, by definition, again, what we could do is we could back up eidos to the age of 13. That we can do, because at the age of 13, the boy is considered to be a halachic adult, but not below that. And even at 13, it sounds like we'll accept his eidos from metaltalin, but will not accept his eidos for karka. Okay, incredible. Amra Meir says, matana. So this is very interesting. It says, much as we said before, that a child below the age of 18 or 20 is not permitted to transact business, can't sell off estate property, yet comes along the Gemara and says, if he gives a matana, if he gifts estate property, it'll work. Now, if you look at the Rashbam says, Amra Meimar matana, 3 lines up from the bottom, Shal ben yud gimel v'yom echad, havi matana, afapi she'ena yodea betiv masa umaton, ve'ein mechiras karka osa mechira. So we'll say, so once a boy reaches the age of 13, he's a lachik adult, so as much as we say that he can't sell real property, right? You can't sell real property until you're 18 or 20. We want to make sure you know what you're doing, but if you give a gift, your gift is valid. Your gift is valid. So the Gemara says, now what's the pshat with that? Amalei Rav Ashi Meir, Hashta umazvini dimekabel zuzi amritalo dilma mozil umazbin. So Rav Ashi said to Meir, I don't understand that statement. You just got finished saying that the sale of a boy below the age of 18 or 20 is not good. It's not good. Why? Because he doesn't have the right acumen, or doesn't necessarily have the right business skill set. So I'll say, in a sale, at least he's receiving money. Right? In a sale, he's receiving something, and yet you're saying that the sale is not good, but yet the matana, gifting him something, is good. In other words, let me say it differently. You just said that if he sells something, the transaction is valid, but yet if he gives a gift, the transaction is valid. How does that make any sense? At least in the case of a sale, he's getting something. So if you're telling me that's not enough, we're concerned that he's underselling it, then why should he have the ability to gift away karka? To which the Gemara says, Kol shekin matana delo mati levelo midi. How can you allow him to give a gift when he's getting nothing in return? Amarlei, top of Kuf Nun Vav, 156. So the Gemara says, Lo ta'amech, according to your logic, Zovin shavi chamsha b'shisa hachanami de zevine. Supposed to say, so now again using that same logic, let's say the boy who's under 18, right? He's 13 years old. He did sell property, but he took property worth, $50,000 and he sold it for $60,000. So that is, according to your logic, that should work, right? Because our whole concern is that he's going to undersell it. But Baruch Hashem, if he's able to go ahead and sell it for more than market, isn't that great? Ella, the Gemara says, no. So this is interesting. Chazal understood young people like money. I mean, old people like money also, right? But young, what's interesting over here is young people could be more easily swayed by the lure of fast money, right? So you see this all the time, right? Everybody wants to become rich in their first job, right? Of course, I'm ready to start working. I just want guaranteed wealth and success, in my first internship. I just want to make sure that I'm going to be able to be a millionaire So the Gemara is so fascinating. And again, that desire, which on one hand is beautiful because it fuels a certain energy, and it fuels a certain what's the right word, dynamic positivity. So the Gemara says, but again, young people are easily swayed by the promise of instant or fast money. So what are we concerned about? The Amrit Zvine. So we're concerned that if a young person, when he sells off the estate property, they were concerned that if indeed it is a good sale, Zimnin de Mekarkashile Zuze, Azil Mazbin Lakulhu Nichase Davua. What are we concerned? I'm concerned about the fact that maybe someone's going to come in front of the kid, and what are they going to do? They're going to go ahead and rattle some money. And because they're going to rattle some money, what's going to happen? The kid's going to get very excited about it, and he's going to undersell the property. That's what we're concerned about over here. Okay, so the Gemara says, Aval Gabi Matana. So I'll say, first of all, this is very important. So now I understand, there's a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of now I understand why it is that halacha l'maisa, if a kid below the age of 18 or 20 sells the property, the sale is not good. So first of all, again, in general, we understood they were concerned that a child is not well versed enough in halachos of real estate or dealings of the estate to go out and make a good deal. So we're concerned he's going to undersell it. But now it's even more. We're concerned that someone's going to come, rattle some coins in front of the kid. The kid's going to say, opportunity for instant payout over here, and it's going to come to go ahead and accept money that is well below market. Okay. However, what about matana? So that allows you to understand why a sale of real estate doesn't work. But why is it that he is believed and permitted to gift property? Aval gabi matana ilav dahavi lehana amine lo havi yoyev le matana. We'll say, but when it comes to matana, again, this is fascinating. I was like, we have the Chazal said the pasuk, Shlomo said the pasuk, Sonei matanos yichya. He who hates gifts will live a long life, right? Which for many of us is such a strange thing because everybody likes getting gifts, right? So we're not supposed to receive any gifts. What does it mean, Sonei matanos yichya? What's the hashkaf of that? The hashkaf of that is gifts often come with strings. Right? And gifts come with expectations. Is there such a thing as altruistic gift giving? Of course there is. But more often than not, when people give a gift, there's some expectation of reciprocity in some way, shape, or form. So listen to this. So the Gemara says, when the kid gives a gift, right? When the kid gives a gift, when this kid gives a gift, we'll say it is clear that why is he giving a gift? This gift is investment in something. People don't just give away stuff. So if there is a gift being given, that means there is some type of material benefit. In other words, these two things work very well kind of off each other. On one hand, the kid likes money. Right? Young people like money, and they like fast, easy money. So the concern is, of course, somebody comes along and rattles coins in front of him, he's going to sell off the land without really any regard to how much it's actually worth. But because the kid likes money, he's also not just going to give away property. And therefore, if he does gift property, therefore what? That means that there's something in this for him. Right? The person doesn't just give stuff away. If he's giving it away, it must be because there is some type of benefit. The recipient did something for him, or he wants the recipient to do something for him. And therefore, again, Amru Rabbanon, Tehevi matana samatana, Tele Avdulahu Mili. And therefore, the rabbi said, Chazal said, let the gift of the young boy again, above the age of 13, but below the age of 18, 20, right? Let his gift be good, because again, there's obviously some type of strategic importance for that particular gift. Okay, really fascinating. Let's go weiter. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Both kin so interesting cases over here. Both kin lekidushin, legerishin, or lechalitza, or lemeunin. So we'll say in general, if a boy goes ahead and does any of these processes, we check. What does it mean we check? We literally check to see if he has physical signs of maturation, to make sure that he is an adult, he is a gadol, capable of doing these things. Take a look at the Rashbam. Both kin lekidushin, the Rashbam says, Af apishu ben yud gimel shanim v'yom echad, va'isha bas yud beishanim v'yom echad, lo samchinon ashanim machzekinu kegidolim, ubnei seir lechashev kidushin badai, af lahakal kagon levat. So therefore again, the Rashbam says essentially like this. Let's say a 13-year-old boy in one day, right? 13-year-old in one day boy goes ahead and does kiddushin. So again, I will say that is old enough. That's an adult. That's old enough to affect kiddushin. We don't just rely on what we call shanim. We don't just rely on age, but rather again we ensure that the boy also has signs of physical maturation, so that he's actually capable. He's actually holding by affecting kiddushin. Okay, so that's by kiddushin. Gerushin, same applies by divorce, right? Because remember again, by divorce, you have to have das, you have to be an adult. Same applies by divorce. Chalitza, ulamiunin. Now, both say, now remember, mion is the exact opposite of all this, right? In other words, what's mion? Mion is refusal. So remember again, that is if the mother or the brother married off a daughter. So again, the kiddushin works, but it only works midrabanan. So because it's only kiddushin d'Rabbanan, therefore what? Therefore, again, she has the ability to annul the marriage. She has the ability to annul the marriage. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, how does she do it? By simple refusal. By simple refusal. Now, that ability to do miyun is there up until she becomes an adult. But halacha l'maisa, again, the moment she becomes an adult, miyun is no longer there, because if she stays in the marriage when she's an adult, then halacha l'maisa, that's going to require a get. It's going to require a get. So by miyun, it's just the opposite. By miyun, she has the ability to do miyun until she becomes a gedolah. Okay. So we check for all. So it says Rav Nachman and Shmuel, we check for all of these things. Now, the one exception to this rule is, as we just said, v'limkar b'nichse aviv ad sheyehei ben esrim. So I'll say this is what we just mentioned before. Now, all of these things require that halacha l'maisa, the child be a gadol, be an adult, or in the case of miyun, that the daughter not be an adult. However, again, I'll say when it comes to selling off estate property, achiyeh ben esrim, up until ultimately again until 20 years old. To 20 years old. So this is reflective of the opinion of Rav Hunana bar Chinina in the name of Rav Nachman. Namely, again, 20 years old is the age in which a young man could sell off estate property. Says the Gemara, v'cheivan, debedakna l'kiddushin l'gerushin lamali. So it's another Gemara Sakasha, but I understand. If you're already checking the boy to make sure that he's a gadol to affect kiddushin, then obviously, again, why do you have to do a check for gerushin? As we'll say, right? If you're getting gerushin, if you're getting divorced, what does that by definition mean? You got married, right? In other words, you can't have one without the other. So which means that obviously if this boy was able to affect kiddushin, then halacha l'maisa, he's got to be able to affect gerushin as well. So once you're already checking for kiddushin, then why would there ever be a need to check him for gerushin? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Lo nitzucha ela liyibum. So interestingly enough, where could this come up? This is fascinating. This could come up in a yibum scenario. Why? What happens in a yibum scenario? Listen to this. Tisnan, because we learned ben teisha shanim b'yom echad sheba al yuvinto. If you have a boy who is 9 years old and 1 day, who did yibum. So I'll say, what's the significance of 9 years old and 1 day? That's the age where Chazal said that the boy could affect a regular act of biyah. He has the ability to affect a regular act of biyah. So halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says that at that age. So remember, in order to affect yibum, this is fascinating. Yibum could, technically speaking, be transacted by someone who is not yet a halachic adult. So as long as, because remember, yibum, is affected by biyah. So therefore, technically speaking, as long as the boy can engage in a halachically recognized act of biyah, yibum occurs. So what's fascinating is, you could have a boy who is married, and yet is still not a gadol. Still not a gadol. So therefore, he's in a marriage. He's still not a gadol. But you have to remember, yibum becomes a daraisa marriage. In order to get out of that, he needs a get. So you could have a situation of a boy who entered into marriage, even though he is a katan. He's a katan. So therefore, again, that would be the case of if he wants to get divorced, halacha l'maisa, and you're not sure, again, is he adult, is he not adult, you'd have to check for signs of physical maturation. That's fascinating. They don't know, saying, get achi yigdal. Fine. Lechalitza. So what does it mean that we check for physical signs of maturation before chalitza is done to make sure that everybody is an adult? Lafukim with Rabbi Yossi. So we'll say this comes to exclude the position of Rabbi Yossi. What does Rabbi Yossi hold? Da Amar Ish Kasav Baparsha. By chalitza, Torah says lashon of ish, which means that the man has to be an adult. The Gemara says aval isha ben gidola ben kitana. But the position of Rabbi Yossi is an isha could do chalitza, whether she's a gidola or a kitana. To which the Gemara says kamash malan to makshinan isha leish lo Rabbi Yossi. Therefore, again, the Gemara comes along and says we reject Rabbi Yossi. We compare a man to a woman when it comes to chalitza, and just like the man has to be an adult, so too the woman has to be an adult as well. Beautiful. And what about for miyun? So we'll say, so again, remember we just said before that you check for signs of physical maturation for miyun. Now remember again, miyun is the reverse. By miyun, in order for it to work, the girl can't have signs of physical maturation. Miyun is only an option available to a kitana, not a gidola. So it says the Gemara l'miyunin. Lafuk b'et Rabbi Huda. This comes to exclude the position of Rabbi Huda. Damar ad she yarbe shachar. Remember again, Rabbi Huda holds that halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and, Rabbi Huda holds that halacha l'maisa, achiyar b'shachar. Achiyar b'shachar means that you could do miyun, literally again, until there's enough hair to make the area of Osamakom look black. Okay? So the Gemara says, Kamashman delok Rabbi Huda. So therefore, again, the Gemara says, we reject the view of Rabbi Huda. V'limkar b'nichse aviv achei ben esrim. So we'll say again, and the last piece was that halacha l'maisa, again, you could go ahead and sell the property of your father up until the age of 20. Lafuki miman da'amar ben shmona esrei. This comes to exclude the position, ultimately, again, of the one who says up until 18. Okay, Sefer will say the Gemara ends off by saying v'hilchasa, and the halacha is toch zman kilif neizman. So now we'll say the Gemara goes through a whole list of halachas over here. So number one, hilchasa, number one halacha, toch zman kilif neizman, which means that literally again, remember I said the shaila we had in yesterday's daf is whether you hold 18 or 20. What is the status during the 18th year or during the 20th year? So the first thing the Gemara says is toch zman kilif neizman. In the 18th or 20th year is the equivalent of before the 18th or 20th year. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, the sale would be invalid. V'hilchasa kegidul bar menashe. The halacha also follows Gidul bar menashe. Now, what did Gidul bar menashe said? Gidul bar menashe said on Kuf Nuhem days that if you have a young man or woman below the age of 18 or 20 who exhibits acute business sense, right, or real business acumen, then halacha l'maisa, their transactions are good. Whereas when we said the ages of 18 or 20, that was just in what we'll call a more typical case where halacha l'maisa, we assume that most people are not really able or capable up until that age. But halacha l'maisa for a kid that's for normal 18 or 20. I'm sorry, but in a case where the child exhibits additional, really a more astute insight into business transactions, they can work even from a younger age. Good. That was Gidul bar menashe. V'hilchasa kimar zutra. The halacha also follows Mar Zutra. Now, what did Mar Zutra say? Mar Zutra said that halacha l'maisa, that from the age of 13 and on, a child is believed to give eidos for metaltalin, but not for karka. V'hilchasa ka'amemar. The halacha follows amemar. Now remember again, what did amemar say? Amemar said that as much as we said that a child can't transact business with real property until the age of 18 or 20, but halacha l'maisa can give a gift. He can give a gift, and his gift works. Remember again, because the logic is that he's not going to give a gift unless, of course, he's receiving something in return. Okay, and the halacha follows Rav Nachman bar Shmuel in all of these cases that we just mentioned. Namely, that we check for signs of physical maturation by kiddushin, gerushin, chalitza, and miyun, and that halacha l'maisa we don't allow the kid to sell off estate property up until the age of 20. Beautiful. We'll say that brings that sugya to a close. Tremendous shkoyach. Let's begin. So we'll say, so now we have a really great Mishnah ahead of us. So we'll say, so this Mishnah is going to do a full 180. So get ready for this. Everything we learned up until now is going to be challenged by this Mishnah. How so? Here we go. Says the Mishnah, Hamachalik nechasav al piv. If someone is going ahead and dividing up his estate, right, he's awarding his estate through verbal designation, right? So he's giving to this one, giving to that one. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Elazar Omer echad bari ve'echad mesukan. Whether the grantor, right? So we'll call him Ruvain, right? So Ruvain is going ahead and giving away his estate. Mechalik nechasav al piv. So he's going ahead and gifting his estate. So Rabbi Elazar says whether Ruvain is a bari or whether he's a shchimira. Mesukan means a shchimira. Nechasim sheish lanachrayis niknim bekesa b'shtar b'chazaka. So we'll say real property, karka, real property can only be acquired through money, a document, or a proprietary act. Chazaka. By the way, what's an example of chazaka? You put up a fence, right? Or you dig in the field. V'she'in lanachrayis, and movable property, metaltalin, can only be acquired with meshicha. So we'll say, so this is pretty wild. Essentially, what is Rabbi Elazar coming along to say? Rabbi Elazar is saying, there's no such thing as matnas shchimira. There's no such thing as this. Right? There is no such thing, ultimately, again, of going ahead and halacha l'maisa, deathbed gifts that can be conveyed without kinyanim. This doesn't exist. There's only one way to convey property, and it's the same whether you're a bari or whether you're a tishchimira. So we'll say, so literally turning everything that we've been doing on its head. Take a look at the first, and the Rashbam in the Mishnah. It's about 10 lines up from the bottom. Rabbi Elazar Omer Echad Bari Ve'echad Mesukan. Rabbi Elazar Svira La Le'in Shchimira Eno Kiksuvin Chimsurin Klal Ela Ki Bari Ba'alma V'tzarech Kinyan Kishar Matnas Bari. So again, so I'll say, this is Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar holds that there is no distinction between a matana of a shchimira and a matana of a bari. That's it. You want to convey property to someone, there's two ways to convey it, right? Well, I should say there's two frameworks. Real property and movable property. Real property is conveyed through kesef, money, shtar, document, chazaka, proprietary act. And metaltal, movable property is meshicha. It's meshicha. You take possession of it, you take hold of it, or you, right? Well, it doesn't just have to be meshicha. Because metaltalin could be acquired in a number of different ways. But what he means is, it requires a kinyan that is shayach, that is applicable to metaltalin. So Rabbi Elazar rejects everything we've set up until now. Right now, we've been always working on a framework that a shchimira has his own framework, his own mechanism for granting property to others. Rabbi Elazar says, not true. Shchimira, bari, both the same. No, it's the same. Go say Amud Beis, Kufnun Vav Amud Beis, 156b, says the Gemara, one second, Amrulo, Maisa Be'iman Shal B'nei Rochel, Shahisa Chola. But 1 second. So it's interesting. So they challenged Rabbi Elazar from a story. What was the story? What happened? There was the episode with the mother of the sons of Rochel. So in other words, Rochel is the father. Rochel is the father. So what happened? There was an episode with the mother of the sons of Rochel. What happened? Shahisa Chola. She was very ill. Apparently a shchimira. So what happens? Va'amra tnu kivinasi libiti. And she said, you know what? I have this beautiful pin. I want my pin to go to my daughter. Now, I will say, the idea is she had sons and she had daughters. Obviously, if she dies, what happens? Her sons inherit her. So halacha l'maisa, she wanted it to be, or in this case, her sons would inherit her. Right? In this case, she wanted it to be that her pin would go to her daughter. So what did she do? She made a matna shchimira. Right? She's on her deathbed. She conveyed ownership of the item to her daughter. The Gemara says, "Vihi b'shnei masar mana." Now again, apparently this pin was a very valuable pin. It was worth 12 mana, and she gifted it to her daughter. Umesa. Then the mother subsequently died. V'kaimu es devareha, and the Beis Din upheld her gift. What do you see from here? That a matnas shchimira works. So you see that a matnas shchimira works. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, no. Amar lahen b'nei rochel. You're bringing a raya from b'nei rochel. Tikbareim imam. Their mother should bury them. Ooh, okay, that's a little intense. So what's happening over here? So I will say, go right to the left of the Rashbam. It's literally right across from the Rashbam. So Amar Lahem, Ein Mevi'in Rai. So the Girsa of the Rashbam is Ein Mevi'in Rai B'nei Rochel. You can't bring any proof from the sons of Rochel. Why not? There is Sha'im Havi, because there is Sha'im. There is Sha'im. V'halavai shetik bareim imam kid mefarish taima b'gimara. So it says, listen to this. So there is Sha'im, and their mother should bury them. Well, apparently, obviously, we'll say, you got to be pretty bad for the Gemara to say that about you, right? So there is Sha'im. Their mother should bury them, and therefore what? Kid mefarish taima b'gimara. We'll see why that is. Ukinasahu the consum rabbanon lekayim matnas imam labita below kinyan. So we'll say this is incredible. So the Gemara answers, the Mishnah essentially answers like this. So remember, let's follow the flow, right? So you have Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar introduces us to a new school of thought, which says that there is no distinction between a matnas shchimira and a matnas bari. If you want to convey real property, kesef, shtar, chazaka. You want to convey movable property, what we'll call just mishicha. The Gemara says, one second, what about the story of the mother of Bnei Rochel, who did a deathbed gift of matnas shchina to her daughter, and it worked. She died, and they upheld the gift. To which Rabbi Elazar seems to respond, don't bring a raya from there. That's because the sons of Rochel were Rishayim. The rabbis penalized them. Now, how did the rabbis penalize them? By upholding the gift of the mother of Rochel, right? By upholding the gift of the culture called the mother, what happens? That prevents the sons from inheriting. The rabbis did not want the sons to inherit, and therefore they upheld the gift. But the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, that is not a raya, that this is normally how this works. Normally, again, this would not work at all. It works over here in order to go ahead and penalize the kids. Okay, let's go. Says the Gemara. Tanya. Amar lahen Rabbi Elazar Eliezer lechachamim. So I'll say, so now again, so we have Rabbi Eliezer, two things happening in this Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer, that there's no distinction between matnas shchimira and matnas bari. And again, the Gemara's statement about, or the Gemara's understanding of the episode of Bnei Rochel. Fine. So it says the Gemara. Tanya, Amar lahen Rabbi Eliezer lechachamim. So Rabbi Eliezer said to the chachamim. Rabbi Elazar. So Rabbi Elazar said to the Chachamim, Maisa, listen to this, Maisa b'meroni echad, Shaya b'Yushalayim. This is incredible. There was a story of a Meroni. Now what's a Meroni? A Yid from Meron. Wow, what a zechus to be a Meroni. Right, so there once was a guy from Meron. So what Maisa b'meroni echad, Shaya b'Yushalayim. So one time there was a guy from Meron who was in Yerushalayim. And what happened? This guy had a lot of metaltalin. He had a lot of movable property. Okay, ubikesh litneim b'matana, and he wanted to go ahead and give it as matana. Now, interestingly enough, the Rashbam says over here, bikesh litneim shayeshchiv mera l'divrei Rabbi Elazar or mekabli matana lo hayu gabe. So I'll say, so apparently the Rashbam fills in the blanks over here. We are presupposing that this is a story of a shchiv mera. So Meroni comes to Yerushalayim. He's a shchiv mera. He wants to convey property to others. So what does he do? Amrulo, ein lahem takana ad sheyikne agav karka. So they said to him, okay, you want to give property, no problem, but you need to use a regular kinyan. Now, both say, interestingly enough, they said to him, now here's the problem. If you go ahead and now we're going to see in just a moment, he wants to convey ownership over metaltalin. They're both saying, now normally, how do you convey ownership over metaltalin? How do you do it? Right? The recipient has to do whatever, I don't know, Mashicha, Hagba, right? Pull it closer to you, lift it up, Kinyan Chatzar, put it in your property. The problem just is, how is he going to convey metaltalin? So interesting enough, there is another way. The other way you could do this, you could convey metaltalin, is what we call a kinyan agov. Now, what is kinyan agov? If you go ahead, right, so let's say in a general case, I want to convey sheep to Ruvain, barrels of wine to Ruvain. Okay, the problem is the barrels of wine are metaltalin. Now, if Ruvain and I are in proximity to each other, Ruvain can take the wine, he can do mashicha on the wine, he can do a kinyan chatzar on the wine. But let's say again, I'm in one location, Ruvain is a different location, the wine is in a third location, and I want to convey ownership to Ruvain. What I can do is a kinyan agav. Kinyan agav works like this. If you convey ownership of property to someone, so you could acquire metaltalin, movable property, by dint of the real property. Now, if you remember again, we had a machlokes about whether or not the movable property has to be tziburin? Does it have to be piled on the real property? And the answer, the way we paskin, is no. So literally what you can do is you could convey real estate of ownership, right? Ownership of real estate. And on the back of that real estate also convey mitaltalin. So now watch this. Now that'll make a lot more sense. So they said to this Meroni, you're shemira, you want to convey property. Amrlo ilan takona ad shikna agav al gav karko. They said, Meroni, the only choice really you have is to convey ownership of the metaltalin on the back of, literally again, on the back of karka. So what did he do? Halach v'lakach beis sela echad samach Yerushalayim. So what did he do? He bought a base sela. Now what's the chap of a base sela? The Rashbam says over here, v'lakach beis sela she'ina roi lizriya ukino bezol l'shum l'shem kein al menas la'agnos. So what did he do? He bought himself a plot of rocky soil. Now the chap is, rocky soil is going to be sold at a discount. Why? Because you can't plant on it, but that's okay. He doesn't need it for planting. He just needs it for kinyanic purposes. So he buys a base seller. So Amar, what does he do? He says, and this is what the Moroni said. Amar, Sfono leploni, on the northern side of the field, northern corner is given to Ploni, v'imo me'atzon, and together with the northern side of the field is 100 sheep. So this is right. This is kinyan agov. He's conveying real property and movable property by dint of the real property. Omea chavios, and 100 barrels of wine. Udramo leploni, and the southern side of the field should go to Shimon. V'imo me'atzon umea chavios, and together with this piece of property, 100 sheep and 100 barrels of wine. So this is how he conveyed the property. Umes, and then the Meroni died. V'kaimu chachamim es devarah. And the rabbis went ahead and upheld his words. In other words, they solidified the gift. They certified the gift. So what do you see from here? This story seems to be an explicit proof, like Rabbi Lazar, right? That halacha l'maisa, you go ahead and a shemira does not have a separate set of kinyanim, but rather again a shemira acquires just like a regular person does. So the Gemara says, no. Amrulo misham raya, you're bringing a raya from that's not a good raya. Why? Meroni bari haya. Oh, both say the Gemara says this isn't a shemira case. Not a shemira case. The Meroni was perfectly healthy. You're going to say, but he died. You'll say, guess what? Sometimes perfectly healthy people die also. In other words, the mace in this case over here wasn't the fact that he was ill and then he died. He was fine. At the time of the gift, he was a bari. And now this story makes a lot more sense according to everyone, right? So in case of a bari, everyone is going to agree that the only way to convey metaltalin is going to be agav karka, not the only way. But one of the ways is going to be agav karka. So now in this particular case over here, what happened? So halacha l'maisa. So again, because he was a bari, therefore the only way he was able to convey was agav karka. That's what happened. The fact that he died afterwards, that was a separate, independent part of the story. In other words, his illness, or I should say, his subsequent death, was not a present factor at the time of the conveyance of property. It was a matana of a bari, and that's why halacha l'maisa had to undergo these kinyanim, and there's no raya ultimately again to anything else. All right. So the Gemara goes weiter. Amr lahem b'nei rochel tikbrei iman. So remember again, the Gemara, the Mishnah said that the Mishnah tried to bring a raya from b'nei rochel that a matna shchimira should work. So the Gemara says, don't bring a raya from b'nei rochel. Their mother should bury them. In other words, they're a big rishayim. What did they do so wrong? My taima kalayet lahu. Why is it that the Mishnah, that the rabbis would curse Bnei Rochel so much? What did they do wrong? So the Gemara says it's pretty incredible. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, mekaimi kotzim b'kerem hayu. They grew thorns, or they allowed for the growth of thorns in a vineyard. They transgressed klai hakerem. Right? So remember again, klai hakerem means again allowing forbidden mixtures to grow. So they transgressed klai hakerem, and because of that, ultimately again they were cursed. So the Gemara says as follows. So first of all, take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says over here, B'karem, that ki agav na'ashkecha m'seches kilayim demachal behema havi. We'll get to that in just a second. Machal behema havi klai hakerem mishum lo tizra karmechal kilayim v'afil mekayim loke. So it says we'll see what the issue with thorns are, but the point over here is they allowed for klai hakerem. Klai hakerem means growing forbidden mixtures in your allowing something else to grow in your vineyard, and therefore Allah l'maisa, therefore they were despised by the rabbis because they did this. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar tamei, and Rabbi Elazar goes according to his logic. Because what does Rabbi Elazar say? Disnan hamakayim kotzim mekarem. They both say now, in general, the way it works is like this: for kloya karem, in order to be in violation, you have to be growing two different edible items. Right, so let's say it's wheat and grain, or whatever it is. Not wheat and grain, grapes and wheat. So what's the issue with thorns? So the Gemara says if you allow thorns to grow in your vineyard, so the Gemara says Rabbi Elazar Omer Kaddish. Rabbi Elazar says it's aser. Kaddish means literally again it's aser. The Chum say lo kiddush. No, you didn't do anything wrong. So the Gemara says Ella davar shekamo mekaymin. But rather again, the only type of item which is subject to the prohibition of klaya kerem is the type of item that you would normally want to sustain in the vineyard. The assumption is if thorns grow in your vineyard, you don't want thorns in your vineyard. Right? So you wouldn't want it there. So what's the pshat? So bishlam a karkum chazi. So I understand like if your karkum literally is saffron. So I understand if you're growing saffron, right, which is something that you want. So I understand what that's klaya kerem. Ela kotzim lamai chazi. But what are thorns good for? Rabbi Chanina, my time Rabbi Elazar shekim ba'aravia mekaymin kotzim besuros ligmalehen. So this is interesting. And apparently in Arabia, it was common to grow thorns. What would you use thorns for? Apparently thorns are used as food for camels. Camels eat thorns. So because of that, it has an impact. And according to Rabbi Elazar, any edible item, whether it's edible by people or it's edible by animals, poses a problem of kloi hakerem. So we'll say, so this is actually really fascinating. So if you think about this now, the reason why the rabbis were so displeased with Bnei Rochel was because they grew forbidden mixtures in their vineyard. Right? They grew thorns in the vineyard. So you think of this just alone. I got it. It's an avera. Why so severe? To say a statement like their mother should bury them. Right? What's the pshat with that? So I'll say, I think it's a very simple yisod. We all do averos. What is the most important thing to do when you do an avera? This is good advice, by the way. When you're going to do an avera, what is the most important thing to remember? Most important thing to remember? Don't let anyone else see it. Why? Because at least if you're hiding it from other people, there's an element of shame. There's an element of understanding that what you're doing is not right. And as long as I have that feeling, as long as I know that what I'm doing is not right, there's a very strong possibility that I'm going to do tshuva and turn this around. The moment that tshuva becomes almost impossible is when the avera loses its shame and a person forgets that it's even an avera. This is incredibly important because we all do averas. So again, at least if I'm doing it in private, I'm hiding it from other people. Maybe a shtickle disingenuous because I'm presenting, one image, I'm presenting one persona, but in fact, behind closed doors, I'm someone different. Okay, we all live with those inconsistencies. But at least that shows the challenge is when a person performs an avera befarhesia. When a person performs an avera publicly. What's the issue in that? What's the issue? They don't care. Well, the moment you don't care about something, that's already a different level. In other words, that I commit an avera, because I commit avera as a human being, but I care. I know that sounds contradictory, but it's not. I commit averas, but I still care. In other words, in the perfect world, I would prefer not to commit this avera. But because I have desires, because I have wants, because I have proclivities, lusts, and all these kinds of things, I'm a human being. So I'm going to do averas. But I know enough to know that it's still an avera, and I feel a certain shame about it, and a certain sadness about it, so I'm going to hide it. But the moment that I'm just okay doing it in public, I just don't care, I'm willing to flaunt it, that already is a higher level. And that higher level already borders on Chil Hashem. That already borders on desecration of God's name. So to actively violate a tenet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu without any care or regard, that level of blatancy is already over the line. And that's what Chazal were calling out over here. Because if you think about it, it's so fascinating. Right? Bnei Rochel weren't even doing something that was bad according to everyone. Right? Not even everyone holds that thorns in a vineyard is even Klai Akerem. But yet again, there were opinions that held it. Why do it? Want to do your averas? Like the Gemara Esther Bracha says that if a person has a desire and he can't contain his desire, so what should he do? He should go somewhere where no one knows him. Go somewhere no one knows you. Yilbash chorim, wear black clothing. In other words, kind of blend in, do what you have to do, and then come back home. There's this idea that at times I can't resist the temptation, but mitigate and minimize the damage by keeping it between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the moment that it spills out into public, the moment that there's a blatancy associated with it, that's already a different level. That's what happened with Bnei Rochel over here. They took the sin public. The moment you take the sin public clearly indicates you don't care. And once you don't care already again, then the system deals with you differently. You do Averis, and Moshe said, this is so profound. This is, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want of us when we sin? I know this sounds strange. You'll say to yourself, no, you got the phraseology wrong. Hashem wants us not to sin. That is true, but Hashem knows we're going to sin. So what does Hashem want from me when I sin? He just wants me to feel bad. Just feel bad. Because as long as you're feeling bad, as long as I'm feeling bad, then good. That means I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. The moment that it could just spill out into the public, and there's absolutely no negative feelings about it, that's a bit scarier. Okay, so let's finish up. Rabbi Levi says you could acquire a kinyan from a shemira even on Shabbos. So this is actually interesting. So the Gemara says as follows. Let's say the shemira says that I want to transfer property, and he goes ahead and he does a kinyan. He does a kinyan to go ahead and affect that transaction. So I'll say, so now remember again, let's say a shemira does not require a kinyan. Doesn't require a kinyan, right? So lemaisa, but let's say he does the kinyan anyway. So what's the halacha in that scenario? So the Gemara says we do the kinyan with him even on Shabbos. So we'll say, normally on Shabbos you don't do kinyanim, right? Why not? So remember, a kinyan is asr midirabanon. Kinyan is asr midirabanon. Alts mekachu memkar, because it's a business dealing. When it comes to shemira, we're very sensitive. The whole idea that the words of a shemira are like they're written and like it's like a kinyan is in order to give him a certain level of inner quietude. Right? We want to allow him to feel mentally stable. So therefore the Gemara takes this one step further, and Rabbi Levi says you could even go ahead and do a kinyan with a shemira on Shabbos, which would normally be an Isser D'Rabbanan. Right? Why? The Gemara says, this is nothing to do with Rabbi Lazar in the Mishnah. This is not, remember again, I will say, we don't paskin like Rabbi Lazar. I want to be clear on this, right? We don't paskin that a shemira is treated like everyone else. We paskin that a shemira is treated differently than everyone else, right? The shemira, the words of a shemira are kiksuvin v'chimsurin damu. They are, right? Shemira has the ability to convey ownership of property even just by verbal designation. But yet, if the shemira wants to do a kinyan, you can do a kinyan with him on Shabbos. What's the reason? Says Moshe, ending off the sugya. What's the reason? The Gemara says, "Ela shema titrof daito alav." We're concerned. Remember again, a shemira is in a very fragile, not only precarious physical situation, but again, his mental well-being is incredibly important as well. Because again, if he's mentally disturbed, right? If he's mentally upset, emotionally upset, then we're afraid that may have a negative repercussion on his physical well-being, physical health. So therefore, in order to kind of keep him calm, if he says he wants to do a kinyan, we do a kinyan. Even if he says he wants to do a kinyan on Shabbos, halach l'mais, we'll do a kinyan with him on Shabbos. So I will say, but halach l'mais, where this will stop, is we reject the view of Rabbi Lazar in this Mishnah. Right? We reject this. Halach l'mais, again, the way we paskin is a bari, for nechas, right, for real property, kesef shtar chazaka, for movable property, mishicha, but we accept the premise that for a shchiv meira, divrei shchiv meira, kiksuvin, v'chimsurun. Dana bosai, shkoyach.